are in my face. I wake up in the morning and I look at myself. I'm like, dude, you need a haircut. And Tony agrees. Like, this
I,
dude needs a haircut.
I feel you. I feel like the longer I go without a haircut, it's like my self-esteem goes with it.
It's
But
true. But you know what?
once I get that fresh
It goes
cut,
up.
yeah, once I get that cut, I'm back, baby.
Oh, you're back, baby. It's true. It's you. If anyone is feeling depressed, go get a haircut. Go get a haircut. You walk out of there feeling fresh. I love it.
Barbers are in there just changing lives
They are.
daily.
Yeah. You think it's just therapists that like really change people's lives? No, you just go to a barber. You can have a good conversation, and you come out feeling like $1 million afterwards, and
The,
looking like $1 million
yeah,
hopefully.
the confidence you have knowing I look great right now. Really, that's a great boost of energy going into the week, the weekend, whatever. It is just a jolt of positivity.
Yeah, another thing too. Speaking about haircuts, and now that the holidays are like upon us, unless you have a guy or a girl that you go to and you lock yourself in on a schedule, really hard to get in. Everybody scrambles before the holidays. I noticed it before Thanksgiving. Everyone's scrambling to get a fresh cut. Even people that aren't going anywhere, like you ask them, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I got no plans for Christmas. Staying home." They're still out there getting a haircut. Like they're just getting a haircut for the holidays. It's just like a prerequisite. It's something that maybe you have to do. Like I need a haircut. So
Here is a life hack that I was fortunate enough to learn very early by my dad. Tip your barber very well. Always tip your barber and always tip your barber well. Because once again, they have your whole next 2 weeks in their hands. They could ruin your month or they could have you leaving out there feeling like $1 million. But like you say, when things get tough where they're all booked up, if they know that they're going to get a good tip from you, you can jump the line very easily. So, life hack: tip your barber well, take care of them, they take care of you, and you will have no issues getting your hair cut whenever you want.
yeah. Shout out to my guy Rick. I don't know if you're listening, Rick, but you're an artist. You're like a Picasso. If you can cut this head of hair, you can cut any head of hair.
Yeah, shout out Rashawn.
Rashawn, thanks. Cool. Hey, so it's almost Christmas. Is there any specific person that you think of when you roll around towards Christmas time? It's not Christmas.
Well, there are a few people I think of during Christmas. Obviously, my dad, my mom, the people who really I spent most of my Christmases with. And then I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, but there is a specific person that has given me a phone call on Christmas before that was very memorable back in 2015 named Bill Belichick.
Yeah. So it's so funny. Yes, that's what I was alluding to because there is some Bill Belichick news that we need to discuss.
There
But
is.
it's before we dive into that pool. You know what it is? It's like things come up. You know what? Christmas time comes up. Mariah Carey's song hits the airwaves again. Like I'm listening to it on repeat. It's a good song. I'll be the first to tell you. Like certain things happen. My wife nags me to put up the Christmas lights, which I refuse to do. All that stuff happens. Like so it's the same thing. It's just it happens once a year. It's a special thing. Even if it drives you nuts, it's somehow deep down it's special. But this story is special because I feel like we've talked about it on probably the podcast before when we had a Christmas episode. But I feel like it's worth always telling it. I don't know how you feel about it, but do you feel comfortable telling it again?
Yeah, I have no problem telling the story. So it was a oddly warm Christmas back in 2015 in Massachusetts. It was like 70 something degrees on Christmas Day. And I was lucky enough to have great teammates who were really thinking about the guys who didn't have families out there with them. So Brian Stork, former Florida State center, who should have been my arch nemesis, but was my boy, invited a few of us over for a Christmas dinner, since for the guys that didn't have people, the family to celebrate with. So it's maybe 5 or 6 of us that were there, like me, Stork, Jimmy, Kevon, I think Chris Barker was there, and I think Cam Fleming. So it was a good mix of just the guys just hanging out. Stork was making a giant pot roast, which I had never had pot roast before. So it was just a good vibes all around. Good vibes all around. And as we sit down, we say the grace, and we're about to dig in to this beautiful meal. I mean, Stork made the pot roast. There was like creamed corn. There was some veggie. It was just made a complete spread. And I get a phone call from a 508 number, which is odd, an unregistered 508 number, which is Massachusetts area code. And I'm thinking, this is too weird. Let me answer this real quick. And I answer the phone, and it's Coach Belichick in that unmistakable voice. He's like, "Hey, Asante, how are you doing? Just want to let you know that we made a roster move, and we're gonna cut you just because we're really short on corner this week. So we're gonna bring you back up to active next week, but this week you'll just finish on the practice squad, and then next week you'll be active against the Dolphins." And I'm caught off guard. So I step away from the table after I realize like where this conversation's going. But he ultimately reinforces like, "Hey, we like you. This is just for this game. We had a bunch of corners hurt and we needed to bring in an extra corner. We were playing the Jets and they were going 4 wide all game. So it was just a personnel move, and I really wasn't in the game plan that much for that week. So it really wasn't that big of a deal because I had been cut from the active roster when I was in San Francisco before and just re-signed a practice squad, and life keeps going on. Like, really, it's not that big of a deal. And then after I hang up with him, my tight end coach, Coach Dable, calls me. He kind of reinforces like, "Hey, like this is just the time we're in right now, but you'll be up against the Dolphins at the end of the season, and we really like you. We really want to help you develop. We really see things going in a positive way for you here." So I'm a little bummed out, but it's not that big of a deal in my mind. So I go back to the dinner table. Like, the vibe is very different. It's like when you get called from class to the principal's office, and then when you first go back to school, everybody's looking at you like, "What happened?" And so I let them know, like, "Hey, I'm not coming into work tomorrow," which it would have been a Saturday. So Saturday we would just do our walkthrough. But what I was really bummed out about was on Saturdays, the equipment room would go to this donut shop in like Salem, Massachusetts, and they would come back with these fire donuts. They were so good. And I would try to make sure I would get the one chocolate glazed donut that was in there. And so that was my first thought. I was like, I'm not going to get the donut that I wait all week for. And I may have, since I knew I wasn't playing that week, decided, you know what, I'm going to have a little bit of this adult beverage. And that was that. So it really wasn't a big deal until that Monday after the waiver wire clears and I go back into the facility to sign to the practice squad. I find out that I got claimed off waivers. Originally, as I was walking in, my agent texted me and said, "Hey, I think Philly just claimed you, so you're probably about to go to the Eagles." So the waiver wire clears at 4. So I'm sitting in Miss Nancy Meyer's office for like 10 minutes. I got there like 3:50. And the whole time I'm thinking like, damn, I'm about to go to Philly. And right at 4, she's like, "Oh, you're going to San Diego." I was like, "What?" So the Chargers had claimed me, and because they had a worse record, I had to go to the Chargers. And that's how I finished the season. Now, another bummer of the situation was the Patriots at the time were the best team in the NFL. I think we had secured a first round bye. So we were for sure in the playoffs. The Chargers were like 4 in whatever at that time. Definitely not going to the playoffs. But because I was going to an AFC team, I was not going to be able to get any of the playoff money that I would have gotten. But had I actually gone to Philly, an NFC team, I would have gotten half the playoff money that they ended up making throughout their playoff run. So I got it kicking the shorts left and right. That one fell swoop. And to top it all off, the people that brought me into the Chargers for the last week of the season were fired at the end of the season.
So if anyone out there is considering thinking, "Oh, I'm having a really crappy holiday," just keep us on to
Yeah, keep me in mind. I lost out on my opportunity to go to the playoffs, lost a bunch of money, and I didn't get the donut I wanted. So, yeah.
Well, you know, it'd be real kicking the ass if they won the Super Bowl that year.
I was hoping that they won the Super Bowl because I think that I would have gotten a ring for sure because I was on the team long enough. Through the NFLPA, if you're on the team for at least 8 weeks and they win the Super Bowl, I think you get a ring also. So I was rooting for them hard. I was hoping to get something out of the situation.
So listen, as a member of another team, you're rooting against another team in the same division or the same conference, hoping that they win because you want a ring. I get it. Like, I would too. Who wouldn't want?
Well, when I got to San Diego, there was still 1 week left, and the Patriots hadn't secured home field advantage. They needed us to beat the Broncos, us the Chargers, to beat the Broncos last game of the season in order to secure first round or home field advantage. And as we were going through that week, Malcolm Floyd, longtime receiver, also Sacramento native, was retiring. And on, I think, our Thursday practice, we all had short shirts that said, like, "Thank you, Malcolm." It was a really nice gesture, but we were all in like t-shirts, and then whatever group was on the field for the scout team wore like the jerseys or whatever. So my buddy Mike Williams, who's a tight end in New England, texted me. He's like, "Hey, we really need you guys to beat the Broncos so that we could lock up first home field advantage." I said, "Mike, we just practice in t-shirts. There's no way we're winning this game." And we lost.
Big difference. Oh man, talk about not just going from like one extreme to the other. Like, I mean,
culture-wise, it was very different. Yeah, so when I first got there, I didn't realize that the Chargers weren't doing well that season. So the first practice I'm out there, I'm on the scout team punt, and in New England, like when you're giving the punt return team a look, you do your protection, and then you go cover for 15 yards. Pretty standard. So we run the play, I do my protection, and I go run and cover for 15 yards. And I look around and see I'm the only person who did that. And I was like, oh, this must not be a good team. Because that would not fly out in New England. Like, everybody just did their protection and stood there. And then I realized, like, oh, yeah, we're 4 and whatever. So, yeah.
Amazing. You know, the things you think about in Christmas, Bill Belichick, you didn't think would be one of them, but he holds a space in your heart.
He holds it. I have so much love and respect for Coach for giving me an opportunity, for even being interested in me as a player. And we've gotten to see each other and talk multiple times since. And it's just how the business goes.
Yeah, dude, the guy's a goat. First of all, he's second to none coach. And then he seems to have a knack of dating young women too, like good-looking women.
I did get to meet the young lady this was before it got really public at Tom's event. I saw her. I mean, he was there with her. She took a very blurry photo of me and him, but I got to see who she was, and then it seemed like the next week pops out like, oh, Bill's dating a really young girl.
Gosh, good for him. He's a machine, that guy. That's awesome. Love it. So, I mean, obviously you've heard that he's the new coach, right? He's now in college football, which I have a hard. I have a couple opinions on that, but yeah, head coach of the North Carolina football team, University of North Carolina. What's your thoughts on that?
I was very shocked when I first heard the rumors that he was potentially interested in North Carolina. He sent them like a 400-page document on all his stipulations that he would need for him in order to become their new head coach. And I thought that that was like a stalling technique as a way to just say I'm interested, but I'm not really interested. And when the news broke that he is the new head coach, I was shocked because college football coaches, especially the head coaches, a lot of it is just recruiting. There is so much that they have to deal with that is not related to football. They kind of have to schmooze with boosters and the people at the top of the college that directly has no impact on the football field. So I can't really imagine Coach Belichick wanting to do that, wanting to put so much effort towards things that don't produce on the football field. And also, I couldn't imagine him on the recruiting trail, like going to high school to recruit some 5-star, calling them at 10 p.m. at night, trying to get them to flip their commit. Like I just can't see why he would want to put that much energy into it when he just wants to coach ball. Maybe he'll appoint a head recruiter or someone else to deal with the ancillary stuff, but on face value, it sounds crazy. And I reached out to a friend of the program, former coach, and asked like his thoughts, and he kind of echoed like, "There's so much that goes on." That's
To be
friend of the program,
to remain nameless.
Inside source.
Inside source.
And his perspective was like, there's so much that goes on that I just couldn't imagine why he'd want to deal with. But yeah.
Well, here's my 2 cents, and this comes from professional investigative mind. So, to be honest with you, I think that this was something where it probably wasn't his first, maybe second or third choice, but realized like there was no, and I think there's like a handful of NFL teams that fired their head coach this year. So there was opportunity out there. I think I think when those people maybe just didn't come calling, or at least publicly didn't come calling for him, in addition to the way he left the Patriots, kind of not finding a job immediately after he got let go. I just felt like this was the way that he can get back into coaching in the interim in order to get back to the NFL. I think one of the reasons why I do say that is because I was watching his press conference or highlights from his press conference, and I get caught up a lot on what people say. Like people overlook things that people say, but little words make a massive difference. And when they asked him about it, they asked him 2 questions. The second question was kind of like, it was a textbook answer. He's going to obviously say it because he's going to a new place that he's just got paid a lot of money to go to, right? 10 million a year, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But the first one was, he said, they asked him about wanting to coach in college football, specifically at the University of North Carolina. And he said, it's kind of like a dream come true. And I'm like, oh, listen to it. I'm like, that kind of doesn't sound like a confident man really excited about wanting to get into the program. It wasn't very definitive. It wasn't definitive like it's a dream come true for me to coach here at the University of North Carolina. It's kind of a dream come true. Like the words kind of mean a lot, right? And sometimes you consciously don't think of it. It's just your emotions when you're just in a situation like that present the words that you technically, I think, deep down feel and what's real.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of component to that was like, it's kind of like a dream come true. I think it's just one of those things that maybe he like entertained at some point. His peers like Saban, they're out the door. Like I see this. And then the second question is like, hey, when you start having success, are you just, and an opportunity comes up on the NFL level, are you going to go? He's like, I didn't come here to leave.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't come here. He's not going to say, oh yeah, listen, I'm going to maximize the crap out of the University of North Carolina, and then I'm gone. Like he's not going to say that, right? So I think absolutely he'll go there, try to have some success, and maybe appoint the people for the things he doesn't want to do or really good at or whatever. But I think once a pro opportunity, if it presents itself, comes along, he's gonzo.
Yeah, I think so too. I also heard that in his contract, not that he would do this, but he can leave after June 1st of like this coming year. which is crazy, but
Yeah,
that's like a weird stipulation to have in there.
Yeah, I did see the first 3 years of his contract were guaranteed. Like he was guaranteed the $30 million. I guess because he's getting paid 10. So the first 3 years are like it's guaranteed money. So he's gonna get paid. Yeah, that's weird. And again, like you mentioned that like 600-page, all these stipulations. I mean, imagine going into a relationship with that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you got to really think that this is like maybe a Dion situation where you feel like bringing someone who's high profile in the coaching space. I mean, Dion was more of a player, but like for him, just he's going to get more recruits. He's going to get more. He's inherently just going to draw more attention to a program that's not necessarily known to be a football program. It's a basketball program,
Yeah.
basketball school, I should say. So it'd be interesting, man. I think, and if an opportunity knocks for him, and maybe this is like one of those things where it's going to take some time for him, just kind of like a John Gruden, even though the circumstances of their departure were very different, to get back into the league. Because I do believe, on a side note, John Gruden will, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is him just taking this opportunity that's available. And I think on the North Carolina side, it makes a lot of sense because you would imagine he could come in and build up the program, help them get a solid foundation of this is what you guys should be looking to do. I'm going to help build this foundation for the time that I'm here. He also highlighted how college football and NFL football is starting to look very similar in NIL, the transfer portals, now kind of similar to free agency. And now he brought in a general manager, Mike Lombardi, who was the GM in New England for a while. So he does have a lot of experience there in understanding that professional organization and now bringing it down to the college level. So it's a real benefit for UNC to have him there. And I think it just kind of is a stopgap for him. And I wish him the best of luck, but he is now in the ACC, and he's now he's opposition now. I mean, I can't root too hard. Like, let's go Canes all day over here.
It's just you keep taking punches, Asante. You keep taking punches. It never ends. He keeps punching, even though you're not like related anymore. As far as like you don't have the proximity anymore, he's still punching you.
Oh my gosh!
Now he's gonna hold back Canes from getting to their first ACC championship.
We could do that on our own. We don't need Bill Belichick.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It's funny because like, yeah, I was just thinking about like holding on to things. Like sometimes we like to hold on to certain feelings, certain things. He's holding on to that maybe coaching thing, doesn't want to let that go and just move on to like what Tom Brady said, or what Tom Brady's doing, I should say, moving on to a different chapter in his life. So he's definitely holding on to the coaching thing, and it'll be interesting to see how far he takes it.
Yeah, it seemed like he was doing really well with the media stuff. Maybe he deep down just hates every minute of it and just can't wait to get back to coaching, which also understandable. But he's been doing great at the media stuff, and he's now 72. So I think, wasn't Pete Carroll the oldest head coach for a while, and Pete is 77 or something like that?
I think he is. He's
yeah. So it's just, how much longer do you want to do this for? It seemed like he had a real easy and obvious avenue into the media world, which he was doing good. He got to show a little more of his personality, which was great. So I wish him nothing but the best. I have so much respect for him. But yeah, hopefully whatever he's doing, he's finding peace and balance, and it makes sense for him.
Listen, guy's a stud. He is a stud. Dude, when I get to be 70, I hope I'm like Bill Belichick. Stud.
Yeah.
Rocks a hoodie like nobody else. Walks around with a young girl on his arm. He's getting... Come on. We can only wish. Anyway, talking about holding on to things. Recently, ESPN has put out a new 30 by 30. I don't know if anyone knows what 30 by 30 is, but it's a short documentary platform, right? Or series that documents certain fun things within sports history. And the recent one is the New York Sack Exchange. It talks about the New York Jets, specifically highlighted, and probably on most people's Instagram reels and whatnot, is Mark Gastineau, part of that team. and part of the sack exchange, and at one point held the sack record for an NFL season. But there's been a certain clip and stuff going around of Mark Gastineau approaching Brett Favre at a memorabilia show and calling him out on giving up a sack to, at the time, Michael Strahan from the Giants, who took over the record and had, I think it was one or a half sack more.
A half sack more, yeah.
Over. I think it was half sack, yeah. The controversy around it was really more so of how the sack happened. Mark Gastineau's claim is that Brett Favre gave it to him. Like, he pretty much went down. He fell like a sack of potatoes before he could really get touched. It was counted. The NFL counted it as a sack. Michael Strahan has had this magical moment, which he was there to congratulate him.
Yeah.
It happened. And but there's a lot of animosity that's been holding on for decades. And just kind of like to keep things up to date, like that record has since been broken again by TJ Watt.
TJ Watt, yeah. So his record would have been broken eventually. Now, I saw this clip when it came out. I didn't know the history behind it before. I didn't grow up watching Michael Strahan break the sack record. So that was my first time ever seeing that clip. And I was initially so upset because the person that Michael Strahan beat to get the sack was Bubba Franks. And Bubba Franks was a longtime tight end legend. And so I see the sack. I'm like, Bubba, what are you doing? And then I keep watching the play over and over. And what caught my eye was, Bubba, why are you taking an inside step and pass protection against Michael Strahan, who was a wide 9? Like, that just doesn't make sense. And then I watched the rest of the play. And I'm like, this is a run play. Everybody else is run blocking. And Bubba did his job, but Brett pulled it. So I later went down the rabbit hole, and the rumors have long time been that Brett called a run play in the huddle and pulled it so that Michael Strahan could get the sack. And when you look at it like that, then it's like obvious. Now, for Brett to go out of his way to help an opponent, I have a little bit of animosity towards, because one, you made one of your own guys look bad. And then for him to get the sack record and you're in there with the Giants celebrating with them, like, that's great. It's one thing when guys have incentives in their contract, like, hey, I need to get 3 more catches. And you'll see like the quarterback is throwing 3 little nothing routes and they get the ball and they get their bonus, like, all for that. But when you're doing something to help out an opposing team, that's questionable. It's not like, I mean, Brett has had some questionable things come up in recent years, but I understand where Mark would be upset, where feeling like his record was stolen from him. But that was such a long time ago. And him no longer being the sack king at that moment, I'm sure took a hit on his potential earnings at that time when guys weren't making the type of money that they are now. I'm sure that made an impact. But, man, at some point, you think you would learn to just let it go. Just the fact that you had that record at any point is incredible. And what someone else does doesn't diminish your impact, your greatness, what you've accomplished. It's just, records are meant to be broken.
Yeah, records are meant to be broken. You know, I try to look at things from all different angles, and I can totally understand where he's coming from. I mean, is it healthy to hold on to it for as long as he did? No, but I think when you feel like you've been done wrong, you want to see at least someone acknowledge the fact that it was wrong, and maybe that's just kind of what you look for. It's like, hey, listen, it is what it is. I can't change the past. And was it right from the jump? No, it wasn't right. But no one's acknowledging that it was wrong. And I think that is what kind of fires the underlying holding on to this aggravation for such a long period of time, for decades. You know,
yeah, I think
it's just like no one coming out.
I think Brett Favre put out a statement recently saying, kind of acknowledging, hey, like this really impacted him in a big way, uh, and how like his potential earnings throughout life and all that stuff. So I think Brett acknowledged it recently, but apparently they had never seen each other in how many years since that's happened. So he probably never even thought about it, because in that moment when Brett's doing that, he's not thinking about Mark Gastineau. He's thinking about his friend Michael Strahan potentially breaking this record. So I don't think there's malice or the intent, but you could see when he confronted Brett, he was like, "You hurt me." You just felt just years of angst and pain just wrapped up in that short statement.
Yeah, and you know what though? The way you put, I've never heard this before, but the way you put it and described it, like from an insider, like knowing where that play should have been, and who should have, and who should have operated in a certain way and operated in the opposite way, makes it even worse. Like
Yeah,
when I hear that, I'm like, dude, they knew. If this was
that's
real,
crazy.
if there was, because the only thing most of us who are not in the know is that he just kind of takes this like light fall, and we're just on the assumption that he just went down. The NFL took it as a sack, and that's it. But there's a lot more that went into that people just don't know.
Because everyone was saying, like you thought Brett was just going to run through Michael Strahan, like he was right there. There's nothing else he could have done. Like, of course he was going to take that hit. And it's like, well, when you really look at it, that was the first thing. When I looked at Bubba Franks' footwork, I was like, there is no way. There is no way you just got beat like Michael Strahan, and you're going to take an inside step versus a wide 9 technique. That's crazy. And then I started to like look at the rest of the play, and I was like, oh, okay, this was 100% a run play.
Right. Yeah, crazy stuff. And you know what? I mean, can you blame the guy for holding on to something for so long, especially when there's been no like resolution?
Yeah.
Happens every damn day. How many times do you like have you holding a grudge? People hold a grudge. I come from like an Italian family. That's all we do. Like that's on our resume. We hold grudges. It's right up top. Like that's what happens, man. Like, and I get it. It's like, is it healthy? No, but like I do understand. And I'm like this, dude. I totally like this. I'll be completely transparent with you. Like, I'm all about responsibility. I'm like really big on it, and I think I try to teach this to my kids too. It's like, listen, if you mess up, man, just live. Just it's easier for you just to come out and say, I messed up, I did wrong, I made a mistake. But when you know something's inherently wrong and it's obvious, right? And you know, and it's not just an emotional thing, because you have some facts behind it, and no one's coming clean on it.
Yeah.
And then you have like the governing authority being okay with it, and letting it go too, which I think may be part of the created the wound, so to speak. Like I think that's what makes it really hard. And I think for most of us too, I think we'll find ourselves in situations where we're like, you know what, we've been done wrong. No one acknowledges that whoever was involved in that doing of you wrong doesn't really acknowledge that anything was done. Like I've had personal situations really that like all it takes is just like an apology or an explanation or something, and then things could be good. But some of that stuff gets held on for decades and years. Some people just like for the rest of their lives hold on to these like painful moments that they can't let go because they haven't heard what they wanted to hear.
Well, when you finally realize that what you want to happen is not going to, when the governing bodies ahead are not going to recognize the slight that you've been dealt, the people aren't going to acknowledge what they've done, what would you recommend people doing to work on letting the situation go? Because it's not healthy to hold on to something like that for so long. It's like actually not healthy. Like it can affect your heart and all that stuff. It's better for you to find a way to let it go. So how can people do that?
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, I think it comes down to really thinking about what's really truly important. And I think it comes down to a lot of prioritization of what you think is really important in your life. And if that is at the top of your list, maybe there's something else that you need to spend some think time around to try to figure out like why is it at the top of your list, right? So like if I'm letting this something like this bother me, like there's underlying things, there's other things that are going on that maybe you need to really spend some time and work on, right? Because listen, I think everyone understands life is not fair. right? Things happen to you in life, but that's life. That's the joy of life, right? It's the ups and downs. It's the wins, the losses. It's all that stuff. And I think once you put things into perspective, I think it makes those times like shorter. And then I also think like if you believe in this, I had this told to me a million times in my life, and a lot of people probably listening heard this too. It's like things happen for a reason, and maybe maybe there's a reason that this happened that he can understand and explain. Maybe there was something about like what could be ego or recognition that was really that was really paying negative dividends in his life, that this really needed to come up in his life for him to try to work around it or find a workaround. And listen, if it took him 3 decades to finally make peace with it, at least the guy made peace with it. Like, you know what I mean? But and I'm not sure if that was the resolution. I didn't see how it panned out.
Yeah, I don't know if he's made peace with it, but when it comes back to things happen for a reason. So after Mark retired from playing football, he got into boxing, and he had a great boxing record. I think it was like 14-2 or something like that. But it ended up coming out that he was paying people to take dives. So the people that he was fighting against would take a dive and he would win. So I think that this whole Michael Strahan thing could potentially be karma, because the way he lost his sack record is because, and this was years after his boxing career, the way he lost his sack record was someone essentially taking a dive. So
yeah, and
life comes full circle.
Further, Asante, I'll go a step further and say this. Maybe it's not even just that, but maybe it's more of like, if he was here on this podcast, I'd say, hey, Mark, like, what's your relationship with recognition? Like, tell me about it. Tell me, like, what does recognition mean to you? Because it seems to me that like he needs or craves to be either in the spotlight or recognized for something special or an accomplishment, which is very reflective of what you just said. Like what you just said about paying people to whatever. Like, why would you want to do that? In order to have a better record, show people that you're successful at something or the best at something, or just unique because you came out of this sport, transitioned to this sport and had success. Now your name is being talked about. It's like, it's maybe it's more of a recognition thing. Maybe it's just like, I'm addicted to recognition. Recognition is important to me. Ego is probably big too. And maybe his ego took a hit. Maybe a thought of his maybe having a legacy and his name still lingering around in the NFL for a long time took a hit. And maybe that was enough to make him emotional and hold on and hold a grudge.
Yeah. And it's odd that now, for many people who I didn't know who Mark Gastineau was, a lot of people are getting introduced to him for the first time. So maybe he's finally getting the recognition that he always wanted. Just understand it, because people are seeing like, okay, yeah, Brett did definitely take a dive on that play. So maybe he's finally getting what he always wanted. But, I hope for his sake, for his family's sake, that he's found a way to let this go. I'm sure that had been a pain point in conversations, because I'm sure some random person after, like, oh, aren't you Mark Gastineau, the Sack King? Like after the whole Strahan thing, and it just ate at him. So I hope that he found a way to let it go. And if you're someone who is holding a grudge and you just need whoever to acknowledge that they did something wrong and you just haven't got it and you are just so angry, you have to let go of the expectation that that's ever going to happen, because you can wait your whole life for an apology that will never come. And essentially you're waiting for nothing. You were getting yourself worked up for so long for no reason. Like, learn to let go of an expectation that people are going to show up how you think they should. People are going to show up how they are, where they are, when they are. They may never get to the point where they'll be able to see from your perspective. And it's painful for you to try to wait for that. So I would just encourage people to find a way to let go of expectations, that anything is going to show up exactly how you want it to. People are going to acknowledge the wrong that they did you. Like, it might happen, it probably won't. And the longer you wait for that, the more you're just hurting yourself.
Yeah, and in the end, who gives a shit? Who
Yeah.
cares? Like, really, who cares? It doesn't matter. None of this matters. Like, in the time, maybe in the moment, you've hooked up in emotions, I get it. Like, I've been there. But in the end, none of it matters. And to be honest with you, I think more people would respect the shit out of you by seeing how less you react as opposed to how more you react.
Yeah.
I'll be like, dude, that guy's not as confident. He's got his shit together. He's rock solid, dude. I want to be like that. And and I think the thing is, like, I think people, so, you know, what's funny is that the thing that he's seeking is more attention he gets, but in a negative way again. Like, right now, there's a generation of people who had no idea who the hell Mark Gastineau is. Now they do know, maybe for a couple of minutes. So maybe the thing he was craving all along, he now gets, 10, 20, 30, 30 years, whatever it is, right later, but in a negative way. In the end, it would have been like, when people are talking about you, shouldn't necessarily be about your sack record, but more so of like, dude, that guy, and people could be, that guy's like amazing man, like confident, stoic, unwavering, just like player's player, just an amazing family guy. That's a legacy.
Yeah. Because other people would be seeing the situation like, well, if that happened to me, I would be so upset for so long. But when you are able to keep it composed and just let it go, move on, like, it is what it is. Like I said, people have so much more respect and admiration for someone who has the ability and the fortitude to show up like that.
Yeah, and here's the last thing I'll say, Asante, is how do you want people to remember you? Do you want people to remember you because you had a squabble with Brett Favre or whoever it is in your life? Like, do you want people to remember you as that guy on that video? Or, do you want to be remembered as the Hawk Tua girl? I mean, I don't know, whatever. Like, I'm just thinking, like, we talked about it last episode, but think about it. Like, seriously, like, how do you want to be remembered? Like, do you want people to remember you for the embarrassing moments, or the things you said, or the fact that, you were the better person, that because you were the cooler head, because you had your shit straight, or because you were very confident when most people wouldn't be? Like, how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah. I think that's a question that we should all ask ourselves daily.
Dude, I think that's a good cap to this episode. What do you think?
I think so too.
All right. So, Merry Christmas, Bill Belichick. If you're out there, we're thinking of you. Good luck over at UNC. Also, too,
not too much luck,
White
though.
Tiger. Yeah, not too much luck. Just maybe second, third place. Make sure you don't do too good.
Yeah.
Also, we're live streaming on YouTube channel. Literally started from scratch again, which is awesome. Much love for our number one subscriber. I think I know who you are, and if you are, love you. No matter who you are, I love you. But now I just checked this morning before we started, and this could be different when this podcast airs. But 6, Asante.
We're moving.
6. We're moving, and we're trending in the right direction. So that's awesome. And we'll see. Take a look. I think it's the White Tiger. I should know this if I'm going to put it out, but I don't, unfortunately. But it's the White Tiger Pod on YouTube. We're going to be posting videos of this. So if you're listening to this, you can see two handsome men talk to each other for 45 minutes on YouTube, if you like that type of thing. And we put our shorts up there, our clips from our social media platforms. You'll see us and our words of wisdom for like 60 seconds or less. If you're into that, you can see that too. So yeah, appreciate each and every one of you. We'll be back next week before the holiday to wish everybody some more Christmas spirit. Maybe we'll hear from Bill Belichick saying he wants to be on the podcast.
Maybe. Maybe.
No, I mean, you're a powerful person, Asante. Listen, you're breaking down the Niners on local Sacramento TV. You're doing major things, buddy. Author, working in the dark, right?
Working through the dark, right there.
Oh, working through the dark. I'm sorry, dude.
No, good. Okay.
You can find that on Amazon.
Yep.
Have you hit are you a New York Times bestseller yet?
Still working on it.
Still working on it. All right. And if it doesn't happen, I'm sure you will not hold a grudge.
I might.
I see an ad campaign in your future. Any parting words, Asante?
No, stay safe. learn to let things go. And we are at White Tiger Pod on YouTube. So you can catch us there.
Yeah, check it out. All right. All's well. See you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.
Yay.